Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the Women in Medicine Summit, a transformational CME conference happening September 13th to 14th at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. Engage in leadership programming, learn negotiation skills, receive on-site coaching and mentoring, and see who will win this year's I Stand With Her awards. This year, we're excited to offer unique programming that includes a special session on how using improv comedy can bring fun back into medicine. We also have financial sessions tailored to help you navigate the complexities of personal and professional finances. Discover ways to advance into leadership roles, combat burnout, and either reignite your love for your current role or find joy in a new career path. Don't forget our Friday evening gala, a highlight this year you definitely won't want to miss. Register now at womeninmedicinesummit.org and be part of the movement that is shaping the future of healthcare. Join us to network, learn, and celebrate the power of women in medicine.
My guest today is Dr. Shideh Shafie. She's an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Brown University and runs her own performance coaching practice. With her unique perspective stemming from her expertise in emergency medicine and operations, she helps busy professionals build lives that allow them to thrive in both their personal and professional spheres. She leverages the latest science on stress to teach her clients how to harness the power and energy behind it to keep moving forward and attain their goals without sacrificing their family lives. When she's not working, she enjoys hiking, playing tennis, and spending time with her twins and her dog. Shideh is a ball of energy. She's so fun. I love her insights, and today's episode will be a real treat. Enjoy. Welcome to the Revitalizing Doctor podcast. We interview trailblazers in medicine that embody the Revitalize Women vision to empower women to innovate and influence medicine, to value authenticity, respect, and work-life harmony. We recognize the challenges in medicine, and we're committed to providing coaching-informed strategies to help you go from surviving to thriving. Thrilled today to have Dr. Shideh Shafie with me. I first heard about Dr. Shafie on Friend of the Pod, the Whole Physicians podcast. And when I heard her episode on that podcast, I literally thought to myself, where has she been my whole life? Her story on that podcast about how she experienced burnout in emergency medicine and rebuilt, reshaped her life using coaching-informed strategies, I had this feeling that I had to talk to her. And I tried to, and I got on her website. I thought about sending her a message, and for some reason I didn't. And then I got to meet her in real life at ASAP last year. And she just has this infectious quality about her. So smart, so insightful. And I'm just so thankful to have you on the podcast today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It was so fun. And infectious is okay now, even post-COVID. It's okay to be infectious now.
It's good news when I say infectious and I don't have a stress response and think of COVID. So we've come a long ways.
We definitely have. We definitely have, especially in the ER. I'm a fellow ER doc, like Dr. Austin. So yes. And we'll switch to first names now. We like to keep it cash. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Shideh? So I am Shideh Shafie. I live in Rhode Island. And the joke about me is that they're talking about Rhode Island or tennis. I love both things. I love Rhode Island. I'm not a native Rhode Islander. I moved to Rhode Island for medical school. So absolutely in love with it. But then moved to New York and worked there for a decade of my life. And then with the aim to always move back to Rhode Island. I met my husband in Rhode Island also, though he was also not native to here. So we just always had this dream to move back to Rhode Island. So I'm a Rhode Island file. I love playing tennis. I am an emergency room doctor. I've done all kinds of jobs in the emergency room, in leadership, in fellowship, in education, a fellowship director, all those things. And I'm a mom to twins. My twins are 8 years old. And then I love to coach high performers. That's the other big hat that I wear. And I coach across industry. So I don't only coach physicians, but in the emergency room, we're really good at teaching people how to perform really well under high stress, high pressure situations. turns out that's a skill set that's needed across industries. And anytime you have big goals in your life or big dreams, you're going to put yourself in the way of stress, because stress and meaning are very much interlinked. So if we have big, meaningful goals, we're going to have a lot of stress. And so figuring out how to move through stress, not as a pain point, but as sort of an alarm to what causes you to have value, meaning. And I love doing that work with my clients. So that's kind of what I do in my coaching world.
I love it. So tell me about your doctor origin story. How did you become an emergency medicine physician, or why?
So it was not direct and linear 100% of the way. My family is from Iran. We came here when I was 6 years old to the United States. And I had a problem called vesicular reflux, which was like a problem where you get frequent urinary tract infections. In Iran, it was during the Iran-Iraq war and there had just been a revolution right before I was born. And then right at the time I was born, and for many years afterwards, there was the Iran-Iraq war. So antibiotics were actually kind of not so easy to source in Iran. And it was a condition that often required you to be on antibiotics for UTIs. Anyway, my family came to the U.S. seeking medical treatment for me. And we ended up staying here. My parents own their own business, but I had this like condition that sometimes people operate, sometimes don't. People don't operate and they watch and wait. And there's all these different sort of standards of care. And I got to be about 13 and it just never got better. And then they were thinking of operating. And then for whatever reason, I had like a miraculous recovery between 13 and 14, which was really unlikely. Actually, I've looked at the data about vesicular reflux and the degree I had it. But I spent a lot of time going to seek healthcare. And I was like, this seems like a great thing to do, like to help people, to alleviate suffering, to alleviate sort of pain from people's lives. And that really stuck with me. And I really wanted to do that. And so then I went to medical school. And then I signed up to become a urologist initially. And I loved like the pediatric urologist where I was training was just the most wonderful human. I actually saw him 2 weeks ago and he like gave him a big hug. He's now retired. That was just like my first experience. I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I started operating and I was like not talking to people. I love talking to human beings. Like I love the one-to-one interaction with patients a lot and hearing people's stories. And like, guess what? In the operating room, people don't talk to you. Like you can talk to them after the fact, but I really like meeting people. I like new people. I like all that stuff. So I realized that I loved the training program for urology where I was, but I didn't necessarily want to be a urologist. So then I talked to my program director and told him that I just sort of liked everything in medical school. I knew I didn't want to be an OB. That was the one thing I knew I didn't want to be because I wanted birth to still be a mystery for me. I don't know why that was like something. I was like, I want to cry every time I see a baby be born. That was like very clear to me. I was like, you can't really cry every time you see a baby be born if you're an OB. Like that's probably unlikely to happen. Loses the magic. So I talked to a bunch of people and then I ended up making the choice to switch, which worked out really well for me. And I went and trained in New York City to be an ER doctor, which I loved. And I worked there for about 10 years and then came back to Rhode Island to be an ER doctor here. And now I do some ER doctoring and I now work at FQHC also doing their like sort of express care, which is the point of contact for a lot of the more vulnerable populations in Rhode Island. 98% of my patients are below the federal poverty line. And so those patients, I like kind of help them fit the needs where the ER kind of breaks down. Like those patients that when you see in the ER, you're like, I can't do anything for you here. If you're in a system where it's not necessarily integrated with primary care and all that, like I actually can now do things for those people, which is like lovely. And it's just been like a really good fit for me.
Reflecting on why you became a doctor and why you're still doctoring, because I think you wouldn't have to still be a doctor. You could do coaching full time. You could do a million different things because we're smart women. Why are you still a doctor?
I actually really like the talking to patients and like alleviating suffering part a lot. Like that. And I see a lot of kids in this practice, which is like, I love seeing kids and parents. Like, it's just so fun to help they tend to be younger parents, help them understand a little bit more and just like have that release. There is something really gratifying about the one-to-one element of patient care that I really like. And even in my coaching practice, I really like working with people one-to-one. I do some groups also, but like, I really like going deep with people. I really like that sort of bond that happens in patient care. It's really amazing. And to like be able to help people when they're scared and afraid and not sure what to do. And you can just provide them with so much relief and comfort is pretty awesome. I went to a friend's birthday recently and somebody fainted and everybody freaked out. And I was like, oh, this is not a big deal. Like you can just like be in your calm leadership energy and like help everybody through this, what seems to them to be a very scary situation. And like, it's just like it's like a superpower. It's fun. And it's a way to like love on people in a really amazing way.
I love that. Do you think that's the way you always felt about medicine, or has it morphed into that feeling, that superpower and that love and that joy in those one-on-one interactions?
I think it's taken ups and downs. I mean, in the beginning, when you don't know what the heck you're doing, you're just like so caught up in yourself. Like, oh my God, am I doing this right? Like in the very beginning, when you first become a doctor. So that part, like obviously people get through that part. But I do think one thing that I know we're going to be talking a lot about boundaries later today. And one of the things that comes up for me is like, there were periods in my life where I noticed I would get testy, and that was because I was working too much or there was too much. Like if you're doctoring 5 days a week, by that fifth shift, you're crispy. It's just like not having enough time to recover from working. Because especially in the emergency room, like holding is like trauma and pain all day long. And we definitely have like a wall up, what we have to do because of the work you do. Like you can't just like spill apart and cry every time you see something sad or when you're frustrated with something that's not working in the hospital. But you do need time to let go of that. And so if you fill yourself with this, like when it's 5 days in a row and you just haven't had time to do anything that like makes you feel whole and intact again, then you get a little crispy. So I noticed that when I was working too much, I would definitely, that my joy would diminish for me. Or when I had unrealistic expectations of myself. Like I was an administrator for a while in the emergency room for many years, actually. And I loved that work. But that was one of my first lessons in boundaries was like, I did the schedule. I did the schedule for 45 doctors, many of whom had trained me. And I very boundaried with the schedule because at some point you have to have rules so that we can get this train moving and get the schedule on time. And I remember like I made a strict boundary, very much vocalized that like nothing would be accepted by text message or verbal communication about your schedule off. It was not in my email. It's like it didn't happen because with your email, you can like sort of sort it out. But with text messaging, it all had to go to a central place that I could go look at when it was time to do the schedule. And sometimes I would feel pressure to like respond to people while on shift about their schedule concerns. And I was like, oh, from now on, I'm never like, those were moments where I would like lose my joy. And like what I was doing, it was taking my energy away from like being in the moment with my patients and my care area and whatever to like this other place where I'm like, oh, I got to think about like what you want for Christmas or scheduling. Like I can't do both. And so those were places where boundaries actually really end up helping me to regain my joy. So sort of both of those places.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Are you a physician mom with school-aged children feeling utterly exhausted? My friend Dr. Shideh Shafie invites you to take a little time this summer to join her in a small, intimate group for meaningful conversations. Dr. Shafie is an emergency physician, coach, and mom to 8-year-old twins. She understands firsthand what you're going through. This isn't a pizza party or a yoga class. You'll meet for 2 one-hour sessions twice a month starting in July to help you move out of exhaustion, let go of mom guilt, and live a life you're not only proud of, but can truly enjoy. Connect with her on LinkedIn or Instagram at Shideh Shafie to learn more. Shideh is spelled Shideh, and Shafie is spelled Shafie. You can also check the show notes for a link so you can connect with her there as well. I think that's a great segue into what we plan to talk about today, which is boundaries. And I have this theory that emergency medicine has the highest burnout of any field in medicine. And my thesis on this is that it is related to a lack of boundaries, individually and collectively. What's your response to that?
I 100% agree. I think that in the emergency medicine, for example, right? Like we've always worked in places where they're short staffed, right? Like people leave, there's a lot of attrition. It's hard to get people credentialed. The credentialing system is slow. All these things, right? What's the solution? It's not like you cut down on shifts or service areas. Then with nursing, it's interesting. I've worked in multiple hospital systems. With nursing, they will shut down a pod if they don't have enough nurses.
Exactly.
Oh, with doctors, they just pull more doctors in and people work mandatory overtime, right? And sometimes people don't want mandatory overtime. And the other thing is like all the other stuff doesn't disappear. I mean, I worked in academic medicine most of my career. So that's another element. Like there's all these other things you're doing. And the currency that drives that is often guilt. Don't you want to not let down your team? Well, am I letting down my team if I'm working my full complement of hours and showing up and doing my like on call? Or that's all is that really me letting down my team, or is the team not structured in a way that makes sense to let people thrive and continue? And then we operate in this model of guilt, like feeling guilty of like, I feel guilty for not going to journal club. Okay. But you've been like, I mean, this is like some work I've done I did for myself for sure. And like setting down, and when I talk about boundaries, like an internal boundary of like, okay, if I used to get my schedule and look at my dinners at home, with like how I would evaluate whether my schedule was good or bad. And I'd be like, okay, this week I have 3 dinners not at home. This week I have every dinner at home. This week I have 2 dinners not at home. And my internal rule was that no more than 2 dinners would be out of my home. So if there was a week that I had every dinner at home and there was journal club that night, then I would consider going. But if I'd already been to the hospital 2 days that week and the journal club was one of the 9 nights off, I was like, oh, that's not an option for me. Like that was just like sort of like my internal barometer was 2 nights or 3 nights would be the max I would be out of the house. And it changed over time with kids and different things, but you have to sort of create those rules for yourself. I remember during interview season, people ask you to interview. And I don't think we are taught to really think about our internal boundaries. They say, what dates are you available to interview? And some people get 20 dates because it's like a 3-month period or like 20 days or even more, 30 days. And then they get 14 interview days. And I get 1 or 2 days each month. That's the max I can give you. And I think of that as like, I'm happy to give you 1 or 2 days of my time. I like deciding, helping kind of shape the residency class. It's also like lost revenue, right? Like, cause you don't get paid for those, right? Where I work, you didn't get paid for that time. You didn't get your hours reduction, nothing. So like, I mean, an average ER doctor where I live and work makes about $200 an hour. An 8-hour day is $1,600 are living on the table. And so if you're leaving $1,600 days, that's a lot of time and money and effort. That also, it's also time that you could be spent recovering or doing whatever. So, and I remember when my friend was like, how come you only got 2 interview days every month that I have like 5 or 6? I was like, because I didn't give them that many options. Like you can't just give them every availability you have. Like sometimes you have to partition what is available to you, not what is available in the realm of where is there open space on my calendar, because other things need to be in that open space. I think a lot about that, about sort of setting boundaries for institutions in that way. And then the other thing I think as women physicians, we really face a hard time with is like our internal boundaries of like, where do we want to put our energy and time? And like, who do we want to share it with? This came up for me recently in there's like a WhatsApp group for my kids' school group. And they're lovely. Like I love a lot of the parents there. And somebody who had the flu and they'd gone to the hospital and didn't really like the care they reserved in the ER. The child had gotten in the ER because they didn't like consider sort of more holistic things. And like, there was a part of me that felt like, okay, I feel so bad for your kid, but they didn't feel great. But also like, that's not really the role of the ER. Like there's all these like internal like rumination. And I sort of kept thinking about responding, or maybe I should reach out to her separately and make sure the kid's okay. And then I was like, oh, wait, I don't want to be in relationship with these 30 families that are in my class as like the doctor to talk to when something like that happens. There's the Dr. Shideh Shafie person who's like, I'm a doctor and I'm here to help anybody who needs help, which is like what ER doctors do, right? Like anyone who shows up on our doorstep, we help them. But like, here I am, Shideh the mom, and I actually don't need to enter this conversation with people. I don't need to like defend the ER and their wait times and like why the healthcare system is so broken. Like I don't need to be like the person who explains that to anybody. I also don't need to take responsibility for helping this person find a better solution. Like if they came to me and asked me directly, yeah, I could do that. Or I could choose not to. But like an internal boundary, like not jumping in to be everybody's rescuer. And that is like, I think that is a key thing for women physicians. I think women physicians are often the rescuer. There's this thing called the drama triangle, something totally worth looking up. And it puts people into three positions when there's a conflict or when there's a challenge. And there's the victim, there's the villain. The victim is like, why has everything happened to me? The villain is like, you're to blame. And then there's the rescuer. And we don't think of the rescuer as a bad thing because we all play the rescuer role. The rescuer is like, oh, no, it's not his fault. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And the rescuer gets burnt out because the rescuer is continually rescuing. And actually, the better role that everyone can play, the rescuer can be a facilitator, the villain can be more of a coach, and then the victim can be more of a problem solver. Like, how can I solve this problem? How can I help you to solve this problem? And how can I help you guys to facilitate a better conversation for the rescuer role? Yet, like, often we just solve problems with our bodies, with our time, with our energy, forgetting that, like, it adds to that sort of triangle. It allows people to triangulate in that way. It's a very interesting concept, but I think really setting that boundary to not always be the rescuer. Like, of course, there's going to be times we're going to be rescuers in our lives, and that's our job, right? Especially in the ER, like when there's like a really sick patient and like maybe cardiology's not calling you back, they have a STEMI and the cardiology fellow's not getting it or whatever. And so you're like, okay, I just got to go up above the attending, or I'm going to go run to the cath lab or whatever it is that you're going to do to save that patient's life. Like in that role, fine, be a rescuer. But just because you're a rescuer in some parts of your life, you don't always have to be the rescuer. And I think that is an internal boundary that is just sort of good to become aware of. Like, where am I rescuing other people? And is that what I want to be doing with my time and energy?
I love that. And it makes me think of something very profound that one of my favorite attendings said to me a long time ago that was also involved in medical education. And there was this struggling resident that everybody was trying to help and like figure out like, how can we help this person get through the program? And he was driving home one day and he saw a fire and he saw the fire trucks driving towards the fire. And he had this epiphany that like, at first he was like, oh, do I need to do something? Should I call? Should I drive over there? Like, is everything okay? And then he's like, oh, the fire trucks are going. Like, that's not my fire. And so I have this mantra now where these situations come up and I've still got a long ways to go, but I start to like realize like, this isn't my fire. Like, I don't have to jump in. And when you stop jumping in all the time, you start to see that other people can do things and that maybe when you were always jumping in, you were creating so much more work and keeping other people back from being able to show that they can problem solve. They can jump in on these issues. So I would really encourage the listeners to reflect on that and maybe try a mantra, not my fire, when you have that urge to jump in.
Totally. And even from a place of like you allow other people to grow and to take responsibility, right? I have 2 young kids and in the parenting world, they talk a lot about like snow plowing parents who like take away every obstacle from their kids and they deprive them of the ability to learn how to take on obstacles. Well, that happens in adulthood too, right? There are things that you know how to readily do that in education, certainly, like, obviously, like, I know how to admit a patient better than like the intern, right? Like, I know what the buzzwords are to say to get the admitting doctor to like not give me as much pushback. I've been doing it for a freaking long time. But the whole point is that the intern has to learn how to do it. And like all people have to learn to do lots of different things. And so we have to let them mess up and sort of not do it as efficiently. You know, maybe if it's like you're leaving at 2:50, it's 2:55, you have somewhere to be at 3:20 and 3 o'clock is sign out. Maybe that time you like are the rescuer. You're like, let me just admit this one myself. But like, you can't really do that all the time, right? And it would exhaust you if you did that all the time. And so really understanding that allowing people to like learn, grow, and take a step back, we get to decide where that's okay and where it's not okay. And it doesn't have to be across the board uniform decision, and being discerning in that way.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've been learning as I get clear on my boundaries and I can find ways to communicate them, I would say at least 90%, if not even higher, other people are totally fine once they know it. They're just like, oh, you're only able to work this many shifts? Okay. And that's the end of it.
Right? Like one of the boundaries I have in my household is I'm Iranian, my husband's Indian. So we have like a different sort of familial structure or familial rules than maybe most people are used to. But one of my rules is that we have no house guests that can stay in our house for longer than a week. That includes people flying internationally from India, from Iran, wherever. Like that's just too much for me. It is not about keeping anybody else out, but like we have a busy household. I have a busy career. My husband has a busy career. We've got very active kids. Like this place runs like clockwork. And when there are extra cogs on the clock, sometimes it's a lot. And so no more than 1 week. And like, there were many people disappointed in me, telling me that was like countercultural, blah, blah, blah. All like, so they get to be disappointed. And it's not about keeping anybody else out. It's about preserving our family and our family life. And that's really a huge driver of boundaries. Like when I think about, you get the text from someone like, can you please work 11 to 9 instead of 7 to 3 on Saturday? You can say no, because maybe you want to go out to dinner with your partner or your girlfriend or wherever. And that's a big change. Like we'd rather not call in the backup person or whatever. That can be a no. And yes, that person's going to be disappointed and the person in backup is going to be disappointed. But like those boundaries, like if you had plans or if you didn't have plans, but you really just wanted the rest, like you can say no in those spaces. And that's the part where boundaries get difficult. It's not establishing them that's so hard. I feel like if you spend a little time with yourself, you can spend time figuring out what you need to like do well in life. And that's sort of to sort of like function well, to function effectively in life. That part takes a little listening to yourself. The part where boundaries become really challenging is when you have to actually enforce them. Because you can say your boundaries, and then some boundaries are not even communicated, right? Like they're sort of internal in your brain boundaries. Like if I'm at dinner at Thanksgiving and I had a really hard time getting pregnant, if people start asking me more about getting pregnant, well, it's something I talk to a lot of people about, but some people don't like being asked about it and they have that right. And so you can say, Mom, I don't want to hear about it, or sister, I don't want to hear about it. But sometimes people don't respect that. So the boundary is or maybe you don't even feel like you want to say it to them. If they start talking about when are you going to have kids, maybe that's the time to get up and go for a walk or do something different. Like a boundary doesn't always have to be communicated. It's just sort of what you are going to do if A or B happens. If A happens, if they ask me to come in for 2 extra shifts, I'm going to say no. And our hope is that no one asks us. That's the hope. Or like if someone's going to ask me about when we're going to have kids, I'm going to change the subject. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to go say, I am actually feeling a little queasy. I'm going to go to the bathroom or whatever. And like just duck out of there. Whatever it is, you have to decide what the reaction is. But when we set these boundaries, our biggest hope, cross our fingers, is that no one actually violates the boundary. But the truth about boundaries is like, what do you do when they do? Because the boundaries rule for yourself. It's not for other people to follow. And that's the part that gets challenging. Like you can tell people, like, for example, one boundary I do have is that I don't really respond to my phone after 6 o'clock on Fridays until Saturday morning. That's just like time with my family. And so like sometimes I get text messages that are like creative questions about whatever things. And I say, I just don't answer. And like, that's hard. Even if people know that to be the case, like some people just want that answer now. Like, and it's uncomfortable 100%, but you have to, that's a skill set to build of like letting people be uncomfortable with boundaries that you have set for yourself. I think that's a place where most people struggle with boundaries, is that it's not so much the setting or deciding what they are, but it's like once the boundary is violated, because we think of boundaries as rules for other people, but they're really rules for ourselves. This is what I'm going to do if this happens. But we're just hoping that it doesn't happen.
Yes. What I like to call the hope course of action. I hope by having this boundary that the world doesn't push me.
Yes.
But of course it's going to happen. For me, and I also think a lot of women physicians we've been programmed to have this people pleasing persona. And some of it, when I reflect on my family, it was probably family dynamics of wanting to like soothe, be that rescuer. How do I negotiate this so people aren't upset? Do you think you were always able to just deal with people's discomfort and be like, well, that's my boundary. You're disappointed. That's just the way it is. Or was that something you had to grow into? And if you grow into it, how did you do it?
Practice. It's a practice. It is literally a muscle. I love my husband's a great guy, but like, I still don't like disappointing him. Like when he, like if he asks me for something and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Like, even for like something little, like sometimes he'll leave his tie, like I'll have like a big meeting and like I left my tie at home. If you have time, can you drop it off? He's not even being a jerk. Like he's just like, if you have time, could you drop it off at the office? And then I like do this like mental rumination. Like I could skip this, I could skip tennis, I could do this. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like it's okay. Like he will be disappointed. And he's not going to be mad at me and it's just like my internal self that's like, I don't want him to be disappointed. And if I can prevent it, of course I will. Like, because it's not something that I would choose, but like really like practicing even in the small steps, noticing that like, if I skip tennis to give him his tie, then I will be resentful of him for forgetting his tie. Whereas if I go to tennis and allow him to be disappointed, I still love him. And I'm like, he's such a good guy. It's too bad he left his tie at home. Like, I get to still think like he's a nice guy who asked nicely, which he did. Factually, but I'm not angry with him. But if I skip my tennis, which is like the thing I really love doing in the world, to go bring him his tie, I'm like, what the fuck do you always forget your tie? Like that's the, and so I really think of boundaries in that way is that they are a gift of truly being able to love people without resentment and just not being resentful of places, especially with workplaces, right? If like someone's asking like, hey, can everybody pick up 2 extra shifts? And like, nope, I have my kids, I'm busy, I got too much going on, I can't pick up 2 extra shifts. It allows me to say like, well, my workplace is a great place. I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. Or I can do 1, but I can't do 2. Whatever it is that's like correct for you, it allows you to prevent being resentful. And resentment is like a really pretty painful emotion to hold. And it's one that seems to grow the more you allow it to grow. So I sort of think of boundaries as a way to prevent resentment. As like, especially when I'm telling you about the house guest thing, like, it allows me to not get resentful of them being in my house. Like I can enjoy somebody for a week. I really think I should probably dial it down to like 5 days, but yeah, or take in some cultural sensitivity or whatever. So I pushed it up to 7 days.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about how it may be a bit uncomfortable at first, that you feel that like twinge of, oh, I'm kind of letting this person down. I can tell they're disappointed. But you know that if you just cave, you're going to have that resentment. And it's a toxic emotion. It's just, ooh, it's a terrible one to have. And looking back on times where I've had high resentment about something, it always comes out in some way.
100%.
Yeah. So it's like a little pain now or like a lot of pain later.
It normally comes out really big and ugly and scary in like this sort of like weird volcano-y way. It doesn't really come out. I mean, that's my experience of that is like, you forgot your tie once, I skipped tennis, you forget something else, I feel resentful again because I skipped something else and forgot you. And then you like, I don't know, like turn off the light switch while I'm reading and freaking melts of Vesuvius erupts. And I'm like, you're the worst person. You never think about anything or anybody else. And you're just so, and it's just like, what happened? And it's all this stuff. And because that's an emotion that just keeps growing. Like, let's lead with like less resentment, more sort of love for ourselves and for the other person. I really do think it's a way of keeping integrity in relationships, both professional and personal, to have clean boundaries for yourself.
So one of the things that's really important for me for boundaries is the way people talk to each other. And this shows up at work when you're dealing with consultants. And oftentimes with emergency medicine, you're calling somebody and you're giving them work. They have to admit somebody, they have to come in and see a patient, they have to come in and do a procedure. And I will tolerate like kind of especially if it's the middle of the night, someone being like a little cranky at first, as long as like they kind of redirect and like they don't start kind of throwing out insults. But when it gets to that ugly level, I just don't allow that anymore. And I'm curious if you have some phrases that you use when things like get to that level and someone's saying something very like, oh, ER docs, they're dumb. I can't believe you can't handle this on your own or something like that. What would your response be to a comment like that?
I often love to use this phrase. I'm not sure if this conversation is being productive right now. Why don't we take a little break and we'll come back to it in a few minutes? If the time allows that. I can think of like a very funny situation where this radiologist was ready to like, not a radiologist, it was a cardiologist ready to like call the radiology resident who was doing like a gated CT or something like that. I don't know what kind of fancy CT because we have an observation unit of the chest. And he was like, I'm going to call her and yell at her because that's the wrong protocol. Like I just was like, Dr. Blink, do you think that's going to help? Because I was the doctor in between the two of them. And he was like, what? And I'd say really calm. I am a big believer of like co-regulation, which is the sort of like when people are going up there, like you don't need to join them there. You can just be like, all right, we're not going to do this. Stay really calm. And you would start noticing yourself because sometimes the key tendency is what's like coming at you is to go right back at them. And then it's just like burns a lot of energy. It feels freaking horrible in your body. So you're just like, okay, I can't do this, but you stay calm and like take a little breath. Like we are humans. And I think that's a really important part to remember. We are actually humans, not machines in the ER. And we're really good at buttoning up our emotions. But when someone's yelling at you or like degrading you or treating you really, really, like sometimes you just need a breath. And that's okay. Like it's okay to like go out of the ambulance bay, take like 3 deep breaths and come back in. Because otherwise, like it's like holding on to it, just it's like holding back tears. It's like a really uncomfortable, horrible feeling. And you can just like let it out for a second before you go back in and compose yourself. Even if you haven't been the one yelling, like being yelled at doesn't feel great.
Yeah, we just did this session with our residents yesterday, and we had a psychologist join us for how to disclose an adverse event. And we went through like if patient's very upset or their family member's very upset. And he also brought up this idea of co-regulation and mirror neurons. So if you do coaching, you've heard of coaching, mirror neurons is this huge thing that we're actually hardwired to start to respond similarly to the person across from us or the person we're interacting with. And his first thing was validate what they're saying. And you can validate without agreeing. So you can say a phrase like, it seems like you're really upset right now. It seems like you're really frustrated right now. And then he said again, if their voice is loud and they're talking fast, like you're saying, bring it down to a slower tempo, take breaths before you say something to them, and quieter, and then the redirect. And I think of it as like jujitsu. It's a higher level. It takes so much emotional regulation in those moments.
Because your mirror neurons want you to join them where they're at.
Yes.
Right? And so you have to really be conscious and like sort of downregulate yourself.
Yeah. What's your tricks for downregulating?
Like one thing I really love is like, I always have a cup of hot tea or like something to drink. I'm at my station. And so like really just like putting my hands up in the temperature, whatever it is, and just like being really conscious and just sort of brings you into your body. This thing where you feel with your fingertips, it's like very subtle. And just these things take practice and just becoming aware of what different feelings feel like in your body and not judging any of them, but deciding like when you start feeling your blood boil, like maybe this is not the time to send an email. Maybe this is not the time to like say what it, like let whatever's come up for me right this second. Sometimes it is, right? Like if someone's like, you know, like coming to punch you, like maybe you do want that anger to show up and like you're going to defend yourself or whatever it is that you need to do, right? Like it's not a cookie cutter situation, but just awareness in that space. And one of the things you had asked in the form was about thinking about a tools to learn. That's one of my favorite tools that is completely free that I think every human on earth should download. And there's an app called the How We Feel app. It's made in conjunction with Mark Brackett from the Yale School of Emotional Intelligence. And it is a really great resource. It's completely free. I think that you can do donations if you want. I don't do all the prompts, but they added more prompts to it. It has this it teaches the ruler framework for emotional intelligence, and you click on a feeling every once in a while. First of all, there's all these feelings that most of my clients have never heard of. A lot of really high functioning, high performing people, especially physicians, our emotional intelligence is it's just not something we spent time learning. And it's so I didn't even know that was a feeling. And I was like, yeah, that's a feeling. And it was so fun, but it's a really great tool to start building awareness of those things. I highly recommend it. It's so easy. It takes 3 seconds to utilize every day. And then you have these little videos that teach a lot of really great, useful stuff. Because I think when we talk about emotional intelligence, people think predicting other people's emotions, being able to, but that's not what emotional intelligence is. It's not limited to that. It's sort of understanding your own emotional regulation also. And it doesn't mean you sit down and cry, give people lots of hugs. That's not any of it. It's none of that. It's very much about performance and being functional in this world, highly functional.
I love it. I'm going to download it. You've sold me on it. Trick I have for people is to try to increase their emotional granularity is when you feel an emotion and you're I'm mad, I'm sad. Because that's often where people start out. Most people can only name 6 emotions. Is try to add 2 more descriptors on after mad. And frequently what you find if you're mad, what's usually behind it or often is you're frustrated, you're disappointed, you're actually sad. And that helps you kind of figure out what you need. And I think that's the other question when you have these emotions, what do I need? Or this boundary, what do I need right now? Or what am I going to need to show up to my shifts and not be resentful? And frequently that's rest.
Speaking of boundaries, one of the ones I had when I was working a ton of overnights was to my husband was do not ask me, if you want to ask me going out with your friends or doing something, asking something of me, do not ask me post overnight. Because in the morning when I come home from an overnight, I'm a big believer that burnout is not a stuck state. We live in a range between burnout and engagement at all times. But at post overnight, I'm way close to burnout than engagement. I cannot do any more work. I am tired. I cannot be kind. I cannot be keeping in this moment. I have given enough. All I need is my bed. He would still do it sometimes. And I'm nope. No. We're always friends. And then finally he learned, I can't be post overnight. I get it. The world wants, I don't do my emails post overnight for residents ever. I'm I can't give you an email right now. I am too tired and I will get you one later, but it's not going to happen right now because I can't. At that point, I'm just too tired. And that changed over time. As I got older, that became a lot harder. The other thing I was going to talk about was when you're talking about your tool, about that one really easy trick for that is when you notice I am mad, first to create a little distance by saying I feel mad. You create a little distance that you actually cannot be an emotion. You just feel that emotion. And then you take the next step. I feel mad when, what the when is, what times does this feeling of madness show up for you? And then after that, you add the because. So it goes feel, when, because. And also very important to do with positive emotions, right? We forget about positive emotions are also very silly. I feel rested when I have time to read my devotionals in the morning because I feel connected to a higher faith. I feel there's a lot more in the world, whatever it is. That's not my own personal one, but it could be. I have a client who that's one of the things that makes her feel most connected in the world. So becoming aware of both when we feel good, when we feel bad, when we feel all the different range of emotion and the reason why. So it's the when and why in that way. It's really important because it just gives us a lot of information that, okay, it's actually probably worth it for me to wake up 30 minutes earlier and read my devotionals because for the rest of the day, that carries me through. For me, I learned that I was not a massive exerciser. I didn't grow up being a massive, but I know that if I don't exercise, I feel tired all day long. Or I feel draggy. I just don't have as much reserve. So I now get up every morning at 5:30 and I always go to the gym at 6 a.m. 6 to 7 is my gym time. And I know when I don't do that, I feel worse in my day. But you have to become aware of that. Because often you're well, if I sleep more, I'll actually feel better. that's not true for me. Like I actually, moving my body will make me feel better than sleeping most of the time.
Yeah, I love this. As we get to the end of today's episode, I'm wondering if you had a revitalization moment in your career, which a revitalization is my term for an inflection point in clarity.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a few revitalization moments. I think one was like when I decided to do leadership work, I was just like, this sucks. This, like the way we're doing this sucks. And I want to be part of the change of it. So that was like a moment where I was like, I'm going to go all out on leadership. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that I'm young. But I went in and it worked out for me and it worked out well. I hate when I had my kids and decided to move back to Rhode Island. I was like, that was another point where I was like, I want to slow down my leadership situation right now. I want to just sort of be in this like age where my kids are almost 2 years old and like set up my life here, set up some systems for our life here. I was an operations person, so I love systems and operation. Set that up in my life so that I have more freedom and time. COVID was definitely an inflection point for me. That was when I was like, we need wellness work that I feel we need it now. And like, I had been through coaching after having a horrible head trauma. And that was like my entryway into it. And I'm like, I got the tools to help these people. Like, I know what to do here. And like really read at that. And then now I think this is sort of a newer point where I'm just sort of reimagining what all of it can look like. And it's fun. It's exciting to be in these places. I think we all have lots of different points in our career, and careers are long. Like that's the other thing I always want to remind physicians, especially because I think our path to becoming physicians is often quite linear. Like it's like you just work really hard through college and undergrad, and then you get into medical school and work really hard during residency. Maybe you took a year off there, here, or like do some research or whatever it is to get in, but then you just like get in and then you're here. And we forget that like careers are like, these are like 4-decade careers, 5-decade careers that people have, right? And if that's the case, like there's so many moments where we pull back a little, we jigger it this way, jigger it that way. Careers are very long. So always remember that. The runway is super long and we're going to take off and come back down off of it. And we don't have to put so much pressure on ourselves to like keep rushing. Because I think that rush energy does feel like pretty necessary when you're 18 and going through college and all those things. I feel like I got to get there because I'm waiting for my life to begin as an attendant. But like that energy can't be what fuels us through the rest of our career. Because I mean, our career is long, and so you have to take in different iterations. That you can go full time, and then you can go 25% time, and then you can go part time, and you can switch it up and turn it around and flip it backwards. It's all okay. All works out.
Yeah, it's such an important message. One of my favorite guests on the podcast, Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reed, says there are no rules. And it's a really important message for physicians because the institutions you work for want you to think that there is one way because it's easier for them if you stick on a very easy block module plan for them. But it's only your life. You only have the full picture of what you need and what's going to fill your cup. And nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's not their job to either because they can't, like, no institution is going to predict what all of their employees' needs and wants are. It is our own job to ask for what we need. And then if that person can't fulfill it, like to move on to someplace where they can fulfill what you need. It's just the nature of that exchange is that the job of the institution is to protect, like, when someone asks for us to pick up extra shifts because they're short staffed. That's the job of the medical director or the chairman, whoever's asking. That's their job. Their job is to fill the shifts. That is their job. Your job is to say no when it's too much for you. Your job is to say, I can only give you 1 extra, not 5 extra. And it's really hard because we want to please. We want to say, we want all the gold stars, right? We want the gold star from the chairman. We want the gold star from the medical director. But if we keep saying yes, and then that causes us to like resent the institution, then we no longer can even serve as an employee in any way at some point.
Yep. And I think that's what we're seeing Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation, and I'm so excited that you're going to be joining us for our group coaching forum, which will be March 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We're going to leave that session open to everybody. It's certainly open to our Revitalized community members, but if you're not a member yet and you want to see what's going on at these group coaching forums, the format of that is you're going to, hopefully you've listened to this podcast. If you're hearing my voice, you're already done the homework. And then you're going to come and you're going to bring your problems. You're going to bring the situations in which you've tried to put down boundaries. You're like, okay, boundaries. Everyone's talking about it. It's in the zeitgeist. I'm trying and it's not working. Here's my pain points. Here's how it's falling apart. And Shideh, Linda, and I will be there, and a bunch of other smart women. We like to say that if there's 10 people there, you get the feeling of 11. It's that 11th idea that comes out in a group coaching forum. So that link will be in the show notes to join us. And then I know you also have your own coaching practice. If somebody wants to connect with you or learn more about you, how can they do that?
So you can go on my website or you can find me on Instagram. My website is www.shidehshafie.com. And my Instagram is Shideh Shafie. And you can just reach out. I love helping people set big goals for themselves and figure out how to get there. That's kind of what I most love doing.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I always learn so much and I have fun when I talk with you. And I feel lighter and happier, and I'm excited to share you with our audience.
Wow. Thank you so much. And it's so fun to be here. I am very good at fun. That is probably my top expertise in life. So I can't wait to have fun with your group later on next month.
Thank you. Some of you know I've been working on the book Revitalized, a guidebook to rediscovering your Heartline while doctoring. This book will drop in the fall, and of course, this community will be the first to know. I'm really excited about the end of each chapter in the book. There's a framework which really pulls together the concepts that I've learned by making this podcast. I call it How to Revitalize Your Life and Career. And I use the to help us develop prompts to reflect, reframe, reignite, reimagine, and resources. I want to start to pull that framework into the end of our podcast episodes. And with this episode with Shideh, let's play around with this. So I invite you, if you're able to actually pull out a piece of paper, jot down these prompts, I want you to spend a few minutes writing about what this episode means to you and how it can help you have your own revitalization moments. So reflect on the word boundaries and what does it mean to you? How is your current state of boundaries in your life? What boundaries do you have and what do you need? So just reflect on that right now. After you've done some reflection, go ahead and pause this while you're doing that reflection. I then invite you to reimagine what your life could be with more boundaries. Spend some time thinking about what's the life you really want to be leading, what is getting in the way, and what boundaries do you need to create in order to have that life. And reflect back on what Shideh said during the episode about internal boundaries. What things do you need to have in place for yourself to protect yourself from some of the things that get in the way from having that life? For instance, if you're like me and you always like to be busy and doing things, that gets in the way of rest and recovery, which are key for me to show up with integrity and with the presence that I want in the other parts of my life. After you spend some time reimagining what your life could be like with the boundaries you want to put into place, I invite you to reignite. Reignite. Pick an activity. Pick something that you can do that's going to make these boundaries a reality in your life. It may be making a promise with yourself. It may be thinking about some key phrases, having them ready to go when you know you're going to be in a situation that your boundaries are tested. It may be having some difficult conversations. Spend some time reigniting, picking an action that you can do to put the principles we discussed today into your life. I would love to hear about what your reflections, your reimagining, and what you're reigniting. Please hit me up on social media, send me an email. All the information to contact me is in the show notes. So I can't wait to hear from you about what's going on with your personal and career revitalizations. And don't forget, you can join me, Dr. Linda Lawrence, and Dr. Shideh Shafie live March 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, to bring what your pain points are. Tell us what's hard about boundaries, and we'll work through this as a group and coach each other on how to implement more boundaries and feel good about them in our lives. Thanks for listening to The Revitalizing Doctor, a project of Revitalize Women Physician Circle. Our mission is to connect women physicians and allies through innovative, value-based coaching methods that align trust, support, accountability, and skill development to ignite the courage and clarity necessary to take bold actions, create change, and thrive. If you're interested in working with us, check out our website at peoplealwayshcc.com/revitalize or email us at revitalizemmm.info@gmail.com. This podcast represents the views of our host and guest. It does not reflect the views of any institution we work for or with.
Hi, it's Dr. Risa E. Lewis, dropping in to tell you about a book that Dr. Adara Landry and I wrote. It's called Microskills, Small Actions, Big Impact. It's a business self-help book coming in 2024 by HarperCollins. Pre-order now. Microskills, Small Actions, Big Impact, wherever you buy your books.